Welcome to the evil void of mystery. What kind of experience are you looking for?
In the heart of a desolate town, where the cold wind whispered of forgotten sins, John lived a seemingly unremarkable life. Behind his unassuming façade, however, a storm of darkness raged within him. Tormented by memories of a troubled childhood, he sought solace in the darkest corners of his mind. The fascination for the macabre began to bloom like a poisonous flower, coiling its thorns around his soul. The first inklings of his malevolence emerged when he stumbled upon an old book about infamous serial killers. As he delved into the pages that chronicled the twisted minds of those murderers, something stirred within him. A morbid curiosity took root, nurturing the seed of his sinister desires. The lines between right and wrong blurred as he found himself captivated by the power these killers wielded over their victims. Night after night, he would wander the city's streets, a silent spectator to the lives that unfolded before him. Beneath the guise of darkness, his mind roamed, analyzing the weaknesses of humanity. The allure of control and dominance gnawed at him, urging him to embrace the monster lurking within. One fateful evening, as the moon cast eerie shadows, John felt an inexplicable compulsion. His hands trembled as he reached for a knife in the kitchen drawer. The cold touch of the blade against his skin sent shivers down his spine, and for a moment he hesitated. But the temptation was too strong to resist. He closed his eyes, embracing the darkness that surged through him. The memories of his own pain and suffering intertwined with the thrill of power, pushing him closer to the edge. The blade became an extension of his being, and as the night wore on, he felt an intoxicating rush. The night passed, leaving behind a sense of exhilaration tinged with guilt. John's mind was now an echoing chamber of conflicting emotions, torn between the remnants of his fading humanity and the burgeoning malevolence. He knew he had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. In the days that followed, a veil of secrecy enshrouded him. The world saw a seemingly ordinary man, but beneath the surface, a transformation was underway. The darkness had awakened, and the journey into the heart of malevolence had begun. With each passing moment, the monster within grew stronger, its hunger insatiable. As John's chilling tale unfolds, the question lingers. Would he be consumed by the darkness he had awakened, or could the flicker of humanity still ignite a glimmer of hope in the abyss of his soul? Only time would tell, as his path descended further into the abyss of horror that awaited him. In the days that followed his first taste of darkness, John found himself drawn deeper into the abyss of his own making. The thrill of power and control became an addiction, and he longed for the intoxicating rush that accompanied each sinister thought. His mind, once a battleground of conflicting emotions, now embraced the malevolence that had awakened within. With meticulous precision, John prepared for his first true act of malevolence. He scouted potential targets, selecting victims who appeared unsuspecting, their lives seemingly insignificant to the world around them. The allure of being an invisible predator fueled his sinister fantasies, and the anticipation of the hunt sent shivers of ecstasy down his spine. The night of the hunt arrived, the moon veiled by a haunting shroud of clouds. As he prowled through the city's dimly lit streets, the darkness embraced him like an old friend. In the depths of the night, he became a specter, an enigma veiled in shadows, seeking to fulfill his vile desires. His heart pounded with a blend of anxiety and exhilaration as he chose his first victim. A feeling of omnipotence washed over him, and he reveled in the knowledge that he held the power of life and death within his grasp. With predatory precision, he struck like a venomous serpent, and the world seemed to fall silent in those haunting moments. As he gazed into the eyes of his trembling prey, a rush of sadistic pleasure surged through him. The terror he instilled in his victims became a twisted symphony that sang to his malevolent soul. He marveled at how fragile human existence truly was, and how effortlessly he could unravel it. The act itself was over in the blink of an eye. but its effects rippled through John's consciousness. The adrenaline coursed through his veins, and he felt a perverse satisfaction in the suffering he had inflicted. He relished the control he wielded, as if he had become an agent of the very chaos he once feared. As the night wore on, he claimed more victims, each life extinguished like a candle in the wind. The malevolence within him grew stronger, its roots entwined with his very essence. With each kill, he felt a sense of validation, a confirmation that he was no longer confined to the shadows of society, but a force to be reckoned with. Yet, in the darkest corners of his mind, a hint of doubt lingered. Brief flashes of empathy attempted to pierce through the shroud of malevolence, threatening to expose the fragility of his façade. John struggled to suppress these moments of humanity, fearing that they might dilute the intoxicating euphoria he had come to crave. As the night waned and the dawn's light threatened to break the hold of darkness, John returned to his lair. The mask of normalcy resumed its place, concealing the predator beneath. The aftermath of his malevolence left him both elated and restless, knowing that the cycle had only just begun. In Chapter 2, John's journey into the heart of darkness intensifies, as he embraces his malevolent nature and sets out on a chilling hunt for victims. The euphoria of power and control consumes him, but faint echoes of empathy linger in the shadows, hinting at the internal battle that rages within his soul. As the night's macabre dance unfolds, the true nature of the predator he has become becomes increasingly apparent. With each passing night, John's malevolence intensified, becoming an insatiable hunger that gnawed at his very core. He found himself inexorably drawn to the hunt, like a moth to a flame, seeking out new victims to satiate his depraved desires. In the hours leading up to each night's expedition, an eerie calm settled over him. He meticulously planned each step, studying the patterns of his potential prey like a master strategist. His heart would race with sadistic excitement as he caressed the cold, glinting blade, savoring the anticipation of the terror he would soon instill. The shadows embraced him as he ventured into the darkened alleys and dimly lit streets. Every creak and rustle of the night echoed in his ears, heightening his senses to a state of hyper-awareness. The night became his canvas, and the city his haunting gallery. As he zeroed in on his first victim, a thrill of power surged through him. He moved with calculated precision, a phantom in the darkness. With a swift strike, the life before him flickered out, leaving nothing but a fading echo of fear. The rush of adrenaline coursed through his veins, leaving him exhilarated and invincible. He reveled in the grotesque spectacle of his malevolence, a twisted dance that seemed to transcend time itself. Yet, amidst the brutality, fleeting moments of doubt whispered in his mind. Brief lapses of humanity clawed at the shell of a monster he had become. But he suppressed them with cold resolve. He feared the light of empathy that threatened to pierce through the darkness, as it might extinguish the malevolence that had come to define him. With each new victim claimed, John's malevolence expanded like a growing storm, consuming all remnants of his former self. He became a predator, a creature of the night, feeding off the terror he instilled in others. As the nights turned into weeks, the hunt became an obsession, a ritual that he could not break free from. The twisted euphoria of each kill left an indelible mark on his psyche, chaining him to a path of darkness that seemed endless. Amidst the relentless brutality, moments of doubt began to claw at John's conscience, like desperate cries for salvation. The twisted euphoria that had once consumed him now flickered like a dying flame. As he gazed upon the lifeless bodies of his victims, a haunting emptiness engulfed him, replacing the euphoria with self-loathing and uncertainty. In the aftermath of each macabre act, he confronted the consequences of his deeds and the weight of his sins. The faces of the deceased haunted his dreams, their eyes pleading for mercy, their voices echoing in his mind. A sense of remorse gnawed at him, but he ruthlessly buried it beneath layers of denial. In the fleeting moments of silence when the moon hung low in the sky, he questioned the nature of his own existence. The fractured remnants of his humanity fought against the malevolence that had overtaken him, leaving him tormented by internal conflict. It was a battle of demons, a fight for the soul of a man drowning in darkness. He contemplated the innocence he had stolen, the lives he had extinguished with cold indifference. The faces of his victims blurred together, and he wondered if they had families, dreams, and hopes like anyone else. The pain he had inflicted on them was now an indelible stain on his conscience, a burden that threatened to crush him. Yet even as he teetered on the precipice of despair, a sinister voice whispered in his ear, justifying his actions as a means to an end. It told him that he was superior, an agent of chaos meant to bring balance to a world that had wronged him. John feared the flickers of empathy that threatened to erode the malevolence he had embraced. He was afraid of losing the twisted euphoria that fueled his actions, for without it, he felt empty, adrift in a sea of his own making. As the nights bled into one another, the internal struggle intensified. He knew that he was spiraling further into darkness, losing himself in a labyrinth of his own creation. The cracks in his psyche widened, and the darkness threatened to consume him entirely. Each act of malevolence further fragmented his humanity, and he questioned if any trace of the man he once was remained. He had become a creature of the night, a living embodiment of the monsters he had once feared. As the crimson moon cast a haunting glow upon the city, John found himself haunted by a haunting emptiness that engulfed his very being. The euphoria of his malevolence had dissipated, leaving behind a void that seemed insurmountable. He stood amidst the wreckage of shattered lives, and for the first time, he truly saw the devastation he had wrought. The faces of his victims, once nameless and faceless, now bore down on him with accusing gazes. Their pleas for mercy echoed in the corridors of his mind, haunting him day and night. He realized that he had not only taken their lives, but had extinguished the light within their souls, leaving behind a trail of darkness. The internal battle raged on, and the cracks in his psyche widened. John was adrift, unsure of who he had become. The line between predator and prey blurred, and he questioned if he was a victim of his own malevolence, a prisoner of the darkness he had unleashed. In the depths of the night, when silence reigned, he confronted his own reflection, seeking answers within the depths of his tormented soul. But the image that stared back at him was that of a monster, an enigma shrouded in guilt and regret. The twisted voice that once justified his actions now whispered accusations, calling him a monster, a harbinger of destruction. He tried to silence it with acts of malevolence, but the hollowness persisted, the void expanding with every life he took. His dreams were plagued with nightmares, each one a kaleidoscope of horror and remorse. The walls of his sanity crumbled, and he longed for an escape from the torment that had become his existence. In the light of day, John resumed his façade, the mask of normalcy concealing the tempest raging within. He yearned for the twisted euphoria that had once consumed him, for in those moments he felt alive, invincible, and in control. But the euphoria was fleeting, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste of regret. He questioned if there was any redemption for a soul as tainted as his. The notion of seeking forgiveness seemed foreign, an unattainable dream that drifted further away with each life he claimed. In the depths of the night, the darkness whispered promises of liberation, of an end to the torment that plagued him. It tempted him with the allure of oblivion, offering relief from the suffocating guilt. As the sun rose on another day, John donned his mask of normalcy, concealing the turmoil that raged within. He walked amongst society, a chameleon blending seamlessly with the ordinary world, hiding the predator that lurked beneath the surface. The duality of his existence was an ever-present burden, a constant reminder of the chasm that separated his public and private personas. By day he played the role of the smiling neighbor, the unassuming colleague, hiding the darkness that swirled within him. He wore his mask with practiced ease, carefully guarding the secrets that threatened to spill out. He had become an expert at navigating the complexities of his façade, knowing when to smile, when to speak, and when to listen. Each interaction was a charade, a well-rehearsed performance to deflect any suspicion that might arise. The dissonance between the man he pretended to be and the monster he truly was weighed heavily on him. The outside world remained oblivious to the malevolence that now defined his existence. He knew that exposure would mean the end of the sinister dance he so relished. The risk of being caught added an intoxicating thrill to his nightly pursuits, fueling his hunger for more victims. But the façade was not without its costs. The internal conflict was a relentless storm that battered his sanity. In moments of solitude, when the mask slipped, he confronted the truth of what he had become. The guilt and remorse threatened to consume him, but he locked them away, burying them deep within the recesses of his mind. The void within him persisted, growing with each life he claimed. The twisted euphoria he once embraced now seemed like a distant memory, leaving him with a sense of emptiness he could not escape. The nights blurred together as he continued his hunt, the line between reality and nightmare blurring. He longed for the euphoria that had once consumed him, but it remained elusive, slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. With each passing day, the façade became heavier, the weight of his dual identity pushing him further into darkness. The dissonance between the man he pretended to be and the monster he truly was gnawed at him, eroding what little remained of his humanity. As he roamed the streets, seeking his next prey, he questioned if he was beyond redemption. The whispers of the twisted voice grew louder, telling him that he was irredeemable, destined to drown in the abyss he had created. In the depths of the night, as the moon cast its eerie glow, John found himself locked in a relentless cycle of darkness. The hunt had become an addiction, a ritual he could not break free from. The malevolence within him expanded like a growing storm, consuming all remnants of his former self. Each night, he prowled the streets with predatory precision, seeking out new victims to feed the insatiable hunger within. The twisted euphoria of each kill left an indelible mark on his psyche, chaining him to a path of darkness that seemed endless. The void within him grew, a black hole that threatened to swallow him whole. The guilt and remorse that he had once buried deep within now clawed at him incessantly. He became a prisoner of his own malevolence, unable to escape the torment that had become his existence. The façade he wore during the day became heavier, the dissonance between his public and private personas tearing at the seams of his sanity. He knew that exposure would mean the end of the twisted dance he so relished, but the risk of being caught added an intoxicating thrill to his nightly pursuits. Yet, in the quiet moments, when the moon hung low in the sky, faint glimmers of humanity still attempted to breach the walls of his soul. He questioned if there was any redemption for a soul as tainted as his, if there was any hope for salvation from the darkness that had consumed him. The twisted voice that once justified his actions now accused him, pushing him closer to the precipice of despair. He wrestled with his own reflection, searching for answers within the depths of his tormented soul, but finding only a monster staring back at him. As the cycle continued, John's world blurred into a maddening kaleidoscope of horror and remorse. The internal battle raged on, leaving him teetering on the edge of self-destruction. The city, once a canvas for his malevolence, now seemed like a haunting graveyard of lost souls. The faces of his victims haunted his every step, their silent accusations a constant reminder of the lives he had extinguished. The twisted dance of darkness and euphoria no longer provided solace. Instead, it deepened the void within him, leaving him yearning for something he could no longer grasp. He questioned if there was any way to break free from the cycle, to escape the clutches of the malevolence that had become his prison. In the end, the horrors of John's story lay not only in the ghastly acts he committed, but also in the depths of his tormented psyche. The malevolence he had awakened became an eternal curse, chaining him to a never-ending nightmare. The cycle of darkness and euphoria persisted, each night blending into the next, leaving a trail of shattered lives in its wake. The fractured remnants of his humanity fought a losing battle against the relentless monster he had become. As the world continued its oblivious march, John remained a ghostly specter, a predator hidden in plain sight. The mask of normalcy became his armor, concealing the chilling truth that lurked beneath. In the shadows of the night, the malevolence whispered promises of liberation, offering an escape from the torment that plagued him. The allure of oblivion grew stronger, but he knew that giving in would mean surrendering the last shred of his humanity. And so the twisted dance continued, a never-ending nightmare that consumed both John's soul and the lives of those unfortunate enough to cross his path. The city, once vibrant and full of life, had become a haunting landscape of darkness and despair. The story of John serves as a grim reminder of the chilling duality that exists within the human psyche, where monsters can hide behind the façade of normalcy, lurking in the shadows, waiting to unleash their malevolence upon an unsuspecting world.
Now, how is that?